One is an omega who looks like a rose but has a personality as spicy as chili. The other is an alpha with a gentle semen scent like white sandalwood, but his heart is as black as ink. Both are young, elite CEOs, but because they naturally have very high semen concentration and fear losing control, they carry suppressant medicine with them every day. Duqiu hurriedly stepped into the reception room inside a luxurious hotel. Seeing him arrive, Xiaoxi let out a sigh of relief. Finally, the person he was waiting for had shown up. Duqiu's voice was always steady as he asked Xiaoxi if both President Cheng and President Liu had arrived. Xiaoxi wiped the sweat from his forehead. Not only those two, but President Ng had also arrived. President Ng is also a CEO, but he doesn't share the last name Ng. He shares the same family name as Duqiu. Both are from the Du family. To distinguish them, one is called President Ng, the other President Xiu. Hearing this, Duqiu frowned. Xiaoxi gritted his teeth, saying that Ng's arrival was clearly to harass them. They must never let him achieve his goal. Duqiu confidently said, of course. Duqiu understood clearly that as an omega in business, he had to work 200% harder than his opponents just to match 100% of theirs. But for Duqiu, stepping on alphas to take what's rightfully his was as easy as drinking a cup of tea. Just then, Duqiu's alpha younger brother, President Ng, suddenly appeared warmly. Isn't this President Xiu? I thought the busy one wouldn't have time to come today. After saying that, he reached out to pat Duqiu on the shoulder. Duqiu coldly dodged. After a moment, Duong led Duqiu upstairs. Seeing Duqiu arrive, President Cheng just nodded lightly as a greeting. Duqiu clearly understood that the other party seemed to like Duong more because he was an alpha and Duqiu was an omega. Duqiu was very familiar with this unspoken rule and had long since prepared a counter-strategy. He was determined to take back what was his from Duong's hands. This was not the first time he had done so. At this moment, a waiter came in and began pouring tea for everyone. When he reached Duqiu's side, he even stopped to ask what he wanted to order. Duqiu replied a few words, but unexpectedly at that moment, he suddenly smelled the scent of semen. Duqiu felt something was wrong. He reached back to check the suppressant patch behind his neck. It was fine, but to be safe, he still needed to inject a dose of suppressant medicine. So Duqiu hurriedly asked for permission to get up and go to the restroom. Watching Duqiu's back as he left, Duong smiled slyly. Duqiu had a secret he didn't want others to know, but as his half-brother Duong was one of the few who knew Duqiu's naturally very high semen concentration. Unlike alphas, for whom high semen concentration was a divine blessing, as an omega, it easily affected him, causing heat cycles. After entering the restroom, Duqiu habitually took out suppressant medicine and injected himself, unaware that this time the medicine had been switched. Soon after the injection, Duqiu noticed something was wrong. His heart raced and his body went limp against the wall. Thinking of the waiter's unusual behavior, he realized he had been tricked. While he still had some clarity, Duqiu hurriedly called Xiaoxi, asking him to bring suppressant medicine. Seeing the other end not answering for a long time, Duqiu guessed with high certainty this was obviously a setup by Duong. Duqiu's consciousness became increasingly hazy. In panic, he took out his fountain pen that he always carried and stabbed the back of his hand until it bled. Fortunately, the pain helped him stay a bit more alert. While still conscious, Duqiu went outside to assess the situation. Seeing a cleaning in progress sign nearby, he quickly hung it on the restroom door. Then he began composing messages to send to people he trusted. Now all he could do was stay put and wait for backup to arrive. Finally, Duqiu locked himself in a private restroom stall, gagged himself with his tie, then tore his jacket to tie himself up. He knew the situation was awkward, but all Duqiu could do now was pray that before backup came, he wouldn't do anything embarrassing. But someone else arrived even faster than the reinforcements. When Kwatkin walked up to the bathroom door, he immediately saw a sign saying cleaning in progress blocking the entrance. He frowned slightly, tried knocking on the door a few times, but there was no response from inside. So Kwatkin pushed the door open and stepped in. As soon as he entered, Kwatkin smelled the strong scent of omega pheromones. Being an alpha with an extremely high concentration of pheromones, he was very sensitive to the scent of omega pheromones. Kwatkin noticed that the doors to all the private rooms in the bathroom were open, except for the innermost one, which was tightly closed. He even heard very faint moaning sounds. Worried that something had happened inside, Kwatkin frowned and decided to break in to check. As soon as the door opened, Kwatkin was stunned by the scene before him. Inside was an incredibly beautiful omega, her hands and feet tied with torn fabric from her clothes, her shirt soaked with sweat, her mouth gagged with a necktie, and her eyes misted over with a dreamy haze. The moment she saw Kwatkin, the beauty's eyes brightened. At this moment, Du Xiu's reason had been swallowed by instinct. He was attracted by the high concentration of pheromones on Quatkin's body. Quatkin sat down in front of Du Xiu, helped him remove the necktie, and comforted him. "Don't be afraid, I'm here to help you." Quatkin detected that Du Xiu's pheromone scent was like the smell of roses but a bit stronger. This was a great beauty with the fragrance of roses and honey. He reached out to help Du Xiu untie all the bindings on his body. As soon as the restraints were removed, Du Xiu collapsed onto Quatkin. Du Xiu's breathing was scorching hot. He greedily pressed close to Quatkin's body, inhaling the scent on him. The scent of white sandalwood purified Du Xiu's heart. Quatkin soothed him. "Be good, don't bite." Gently comforting Du Xiu, Quatkin helped him take off his pants, holding his soft waist in his hands. Quatkin smiled and said, "It might hurt a little." The next moment, the pain from his buttocks spread throughout his body. Du Xiu couldn't help but let out a cry. Only then did Quatkin quickly withdraw the needle. The suppressor drug had taken effect. Du Xiu also fainted. It turned out that half an hour ago, Quatkin had successfully negotiated a big deal in this hotel. After looking Quatkin over, once the other party couldn't help but ask, "I heard Quat General's pheromone scent is very strong." Quatkin shrugged and nodded. "You're beta, so you might not be able to sense it." The other person asked curiously, "So that means omegas can sense it very clearly, right?" Quatkin smiled and replied, "It depends on the situation. Sometimes I encounter special omegas, especially during particular phases, and if I don't take suppressors, they affect me a lot." Hearing this, the other laughed loudly. "What's the big deal? Just take off your pants and it's done." Quatkin smiled and replied, "Yes, take off my pants, but it's to inject the other person with a suppressor." The other thought Quatkin was joking, but the other had no idea that Quatkin really carried suppressor drugs. 24/7, whoever dares to go into heat in front of me, I'll give them a shot. The other even patted Quatkin on the shoulder and said, "If an alpha with a high concentration of pheromones like you can stay in an omega's bathroom for a minute without being affected, I'll sign the contract." Normally, Quatkin would have pretended to be drunk to refuse. But just now, when passing by the omega bathroom, he saw the cleaning in progress sign on the door, so he guessed no one was inside. That's why he agreed to the bet. Who knew he'd meet this beauty? After a while, Du Xiu finally woke up. Seeing Quatkin, he was scared out of his wits. Seeing the other's reaction, Quatkin hurriedly asked, "Are you okay? Why were you tied up in the bathroom?" Because he didn't know this person, Du Xiu was extremely cautious. He didn't answer but pushed him away and staggered to stand up. Quatkin tried to reach out to help him up, but the other was frightened by him and quickly backed away several meters. "I can stand up by myself, thanks." Soon after the rescuer, Du Xiu had message finally arrived. The other was an omega with a somewhat flashy style who hurriedly ran inside. After seeing Du Xiu's disheveled clothes beside an alpha, he was very scared. Hua hurriedly helped Du Xiu up and asked, "Are you okay?" Du Xiu shook his head and said, "It's okay." Hua then suspiciously looked toward Quatkin. "Who are you? Why are you in the omega's bathroom?" Quatkin didn't know how to explain. In his confusion, he just pointed at the mop and said, "I came here to clean." After saying that, he grabbed the mop and hurried away. After seeing Quatkin leave, Hua quickly closed the bathroom door. Then he turned to ask Du Xiu, "Who was that guy? Are you okay?" Du Xiu shook his head. "I'm fine, nothing happened." Du Xiu didn't expect Du Eng to stoop to such despicable tricks. Thinking about what just happened, Du Xiu felt extremely annoyed. He couldn't believe he had an episode right in front of an alpha, truly an unbearable humiliation. But on the other hand, Du Xiu felt lucky. It was fortunate to meet this alpha. The other party was kind enough to inject him with a suppressant. If it had been someone malicious, no one knew what the consequences would have been. Du Xiu took a deep breath to calm his nerves. Right now, his clothes were messy, and he looked disheveled overall. It wouldn't be appropriate to return to his room and continue discussing business like this. So Du Xiu decided to go back first. Du Xiu rubbed the spot where he was injected, thinking injecting into the buttocks, what kind of cruel preference is this? Surely not some kind of pervert. The next day, Du Xiu met Du Eng again outside the office. Du Eng flashed a vile smile to block him. "Oh man, why didn't you say a word last night before leaving? Both President Thun and President Liu mentioned you. They said, if you were there, the contract would have been signed, but unfortunately you left, so they had to sign with me. Ha ha ha." Du Xiu cursed silently but remained calm in front of him. But Toothhit beside Du Xiu couldn't hold back. "I didn't hear anything about a contract from where I was." Du Eng laughed and replied, "Soon, just in a day or two." After this contract is signed, I'll treat everyone to a meal. After saying that, Du swaggered away. Tutit ground his teeth in anger looking at Du Shu. Boss Chu, should we expose him? Du Shu stretched out his hand to stop Tutit. No, let him reveal himself. After finishing today's work, Du Shu left on time. Seeing this, Tutit was very surprised because for a workaholic like Du Shu, leaving on time was like the sun rising in the west. Tutit asked curiously, Boss Chu, why are you leaving early today? Du Shu nodded. Yeah, I have something to do. Tutik felt like the apocalypse was near. How big of a deal could it be to get Boss Chu to leave work on time? Usually Boss Chu wishes he could stay at the company forever. Du Shu held his briefcase, looked at his watch, and replied, I'm going on a blind date. Tutik was so shocked he almost dropped his jaw. Boss Chu is going on a blind date. Very quickly, the news of Boss Chu's blind date spread throughout the company. Many people believed Du Shu was someone who rejected marriage. They said it was more believable that he got sterilized than that he was going on a blind date. But the truth was different from everyone's assumptions. Du Shu was not against marriage at all. The reason he was still single was not because he didn't want to date, but because he hadn't found the right person. His matchmaking criteria were very special. Finding someone highly compatible was very difficult. Moreover, with his status, Du Shu also needed to find someone from a noble family of equal standing. So it wasn't until now that he found someone who met both conditions. Elsewhere, Kwat Kin was also waiting for his blind date. He raised his hand to check the time. The appointment was almost due. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. A sound rang out, and Kwat Kin gave his standard smile, stepping forward to greet. Kwat Kin accidentally encountered an Omega who was in heat, locked himself in the bathroom. To deal with him, he decisively injected the other with a shot. But what nobody expected was that the next day, when going on a blind date, Kwat Kin found out that Omega was his blind date. Because his matchmaking criteria were so special, Du Shu found it very hard to find a highly compatible partner. Moreover, he needed to find someone from a noble family of equal rank. So the difficulty increased. For today's blind date, Huathi specially prepared to look extremely stunning. His flashy floral outfit combined with his red supercar caught the eyes of everyone passing by. As soon as he saw Du Trill's appearance, he immediately frowned. The idea of taking a taxi to the blind date popped into his head. But just as he turned to leave, Huathi noticed and loudly called Du Chu's name. President Chu, come here quickly. Why are you turning to leave? Although a bit reluctant, Du Chu gritted his teeth and got into Huathi's car. In the car, Huathi asked Du Chu about today's blind date. So you're going on a blind date today. Aren't you going to get ready a bit? Du Chu laughed and replied, It really looks like you're the one going on the blind date. Huathi expressed disgust. My head's not broken to go on a blind date. I haven't had enough fun yet. Then Huathi curiously asked Du Chu, Have you seen a photo of the blind date yet? What do they look like? Du Chu shook his head. You haven't even seen their photo yourself. After hearing that, Huathi was speechless. Du Chu didn't bother to explain much either. Although they haven't met, the matchmaking info shows a very high compatibility. So the chances of not liking each other are low. Still, Huathi reminded Du Chu, even though the matchmaking info shows you're compatible, it doesn't mean you'll find them attractive. Du Chu acknowledged this, but once again exaggerated the other person's status. He's the founder of the Kinmon Corporation. He's the CEO and chairman of the board. That's enough. Huathi helplessly said, Actually, you're rushing to get married because of this, aren't you? Du Chu calmly replied, Omega marriages aren't based on that. Could it be that heat cycles get out of control? Do you think getting pregnant and having kids is all fun and games? Huathi understood Du Chu's stance. After all, he's always been oppressed by Du. Right now, he needs a wealthy husband as support. Du always uses his Omega father's family background to bully Du Chu. If Du Chu could also find a rich family to rely on, he wouldn't have to keep enduring. That would be great. Hearing this, Du Chu suddenly felt a bit suffocated. Very quickly, Huathi took Du Chu to the meeting spot. He and the other person arranged to meet in a private room of a luxurious restaurant. Inside the elevator, Huathi curiously asked Du Chu, What's the name of the alpha you're going on a blind date with today? Du Chu answered, Kwat Kin, founder of Kinmon Corporation, CEO and chairman of the board. Huathi cut in speechless. No need to exaggerate his status so many times. Du Chu seriously replied, Of course it's necessary. That's the main point. If the other person didn't have such a prestigious status, even if the compatibility was 100%, I wouldn't even glance at them. Let alone go out of my way to have a meal with him or agree to marry and have kids with him. When it comes to unprofitable business, he absolutely won't do it. As long as the profit is high, he'll accept the danger. When the elevator doors opened, a handsome man in a suit stepped forward to greet the other person. He greeted politely. But when the two made eye contact and raised their hands to shake, the other man froze on the spot. Hwati was also stunned by this surprise. Wait, isn't that Kwat Kin and Du Chio? Quickly recovering, the two greeted each other amicably and shook hands. The confusion on Du Chio's face completely disappeared. Instead, he wore a forced smile. President Kwat, I've heard much about you. Kwat Kin, as if nothing happened, responded with an equally forced smile. President Xiu, I've admired you for a long time. It's an honor to finally meet you today. On the surface, both acted like nothing was wrong, but inside they were both uneasy. They even deliberately exaggerated that Hwati was the only one confused at their first meeting, thinking silently, could there be something wrong with their minds? How could both of them have amnesia? Kwat Kin led Du Chio to sit at the table. Both showed no unusual reactions and chatted naturally, then happily ended their first meeting. On the way home, Du Chio sat in the passenger seat and confided heavily. Hwati asked suspiciously, is that the alpha from before? Du Chio gave him a definite answer. He tiredly closed his eyes and sighed. It must be Huang. Hwati didn't understand Du Chio's meaning, so he asked again, Huang what? Du Chio explained, if the blind date you met was the person who was tied up in the bathroom that you rescued, what would you do? Hwati seriously thought, I would feel that person is playing big. Then happily asked them to book a hotel. Du Chio laughed bitterly, but he didn't ask me to book a hotel. Obviously, he only thought of the fact that you were born in Omega. Du Chio's status could not be higher than his half-brother, Du Ung. So Du Chio could only find a blind date with matching background and a status not too different from his. But the blind date he met the day before flew abroad the next day. Good friend, Hwati couldn't help but tease, just one meal and you scared them into flying across the Pacific. But someone as outstanding as Kwat Kin Du Chio didn't want to give up. So he followed him all the way to America. After the blind date ended, Hwati didn't know how to comfort Du Chio, because finding someone suitable for Du Chio was not easy. Just the condition of matching background was choosing 1 out of 10,000. On top of that, having a proper family background made it even harder. Since it was very difficult for Du Chio to go on a blind date even once the Du family was very concerned about this meeting. The next morning during breakfast, the family inquired about it. Du Kanyi held a piece of bread and smiled, asking, Right, Xiao Xiao, how was last night with President Kin Mon? Du Chio answered casually that he just had a meal, nothing special, and thanked him for his concern. Du Kanyi and Du Ung heard the tone and immediately understood this time it didn't work out, so they could be relieved. Du Ung couldn't hide his joy and said, Dad doesn't know it's really hard to find a match for Big Brother. If you miss this chance, there might not be. Another Big Brother has to seize it well, or you'll be lonely forever. Hearing this, Du Hai warned in a low voice, What is that? Du Ung was stunned for a moment by Dad's teaching, then retorted, I'm just concerned about Big Brother. Du Hai was displeased and said, An alpha should speak with the poise of an alpha. Stop talking like a woman. Du Ung had no choice but to shut up. Du Kunyi Ten said, Ungni, really? When you talk like that, it sounds unpleasant. There are billions of people in the world. How can you not find someone? You see, you've also been on many blind dates. Life can't be rushed. Just take your time to look and choose. These words from Du Kanyi outwardly seemed to defend Du Chio, but in fact poked at his heart. Of course, Du Ung was much luckier than Du Chio. His matching background was easy to find, and his matches were now socializing with several rich young masters, so he could choose slowly. Listening to the father and son Du Kanyi singing and Du Ung supporting Du Chio felt he no longer enjoyed his meal. He quickly finished breakfast and grabbed his bag to go to work. On the car, Du Chio sent a message to Hwati, Help me investigate Kwat Kin. Hwati was puzzled. Investigate him, what for? Du Chio replied, I want to pursue him. Hearing this, Hwati was shocked, mouth agape. You want to pursue him? Are you serious? Du Chio was very determined. Of course, what Du Ung said was not wrong. If you miss this chance, there may be no next time. Hwati advised, But Chio Tong, have you ever pursued anyone in your life? Can you succeed in alpha like Kwat Kin surely isn't short of pursuers? Du Chio seriously replied, Kwat Kin lacks someone like me to pursue him. Right now, I can't just sit and wait to die. Soon Hwati called back, That Kwat president of yours flew to America right after dining with you. Then Huathi teased, I told you, you scared him off with just one meal, making him run all the way across the Pacific. Dushio calmly answered, it's okay, the Pacific isn't that big. I can catch up. So Dushio took Huathi with him on a plane to New York. After arriving, he immediately went to the hotel where Kwatkin was staying. Meanwhile, after finishing business talks, Kwatkin went outside and coincidentally saw a familiar figure approaching. Dushio and Huathi. Kwatkin squinted. Dushio pretended to casually run into him and looked his way, speaking indifferently. It's you, Kwatkin. Smiling, he reached out to shake Dushio's hand. What a coincidence, General Manager Shio. Dushio pointed upstairs. Our company has business here. Kwatkin again said sincerely, what a coincidence. Dushio nodded. Let's chat when we have time. After saying that, he brushed past Kwatkin. Huathi was very surprised at Dushio's coldness. You didn't say a few more words to him. Dushio explained, talking too much makes it obvious that it's intentional. Someone really out on business wouldn't have time to chat casually with a stranger on the street. Huathi teased, Kid, you even know how to stage a chance encounter to pursue someone. Then what happened? Dushio replied seriously. I don't know what then what happened means. But when competing for clients, I know I have to pretend it's a coincidence. Huathi was stunned. He doesn't even know. Saying Dushio has experience is actually saying he has none. Huathi had no idea that a few nights ago, to successfully catch Kwatkin, Dushio had stayed up all night writing a long plan to pursue him. Dushio was determined to pursue Kwatkin. That's why he even followed him all the way to New York. Kwatkin is a busy man. Do you know how busy? Just look at his secretary Thang Ka. Since following General Manager Kwat Thang Ka didn't know what a day off was. After the blind date with the Dushio, Kwatkin received news of a problem with a project in New York. So he quickly told Secretary Thang to book a flight, then without rest, flew straight across the Pacific. Kwatkin went ahead with Secretary Thang Ka chasing behind. Wherever there was work, they showed up. General Manager Kwat took action and things were resolved quickly. Just a small issue related to stocks. Kwatkin chatted briefly with the person in charge in New York, and the task was completed. The partner even invited Kwatkin to dinner. Kwatkin naturally agreed happily. Only poor Thang Ka looked utterly exhausted. No wonder this man could become a boss. No surprise General Manager Kwat works nonstop, yet still has the energy to join partner parties. The dinner scene was extremely luxurious and lively. Of course, there were beautiful omegas to captivate hearts. Moreover, they had no chance to resist the alphas with strong scent signals. When Kwatkin arrived at the banquet hall, he instructed Thang Ka, I'm not drinking alcohol tonight. Thang Ka immediately understood. He took a glass of champagne from a waiter, then poured it out and replaced it with pear tea. The color difference was hardly noticeable. No one would pay attention to the liquid inside being swapped. Kwatkin is a cautious man, especially in social matters. He was aware that he had a strong scent signal physically. Although this was good for an alpha for Kwatkin, it was a bad thing. After Thang Ka prepared the drink, Kwatkin smiled, raised his glass to greet everyone, and talked briefly about the weather and economy. The partner introduced Kwatkin to an omega someone outstanding in appearance, with a face like an apple and lips like cherries. He gave off the scent of summer fruits. The partner said his name was Halang. He was also Chinese and an intern at the company. I'm very smart and learn fast, Halang said, admiring Kwatkin for a long time. Knowing he would come, he was very happy and insisted on joining tonight's party. Halang smiled shyly and adorably blushing as he looked at Kwatkin. Kwatkin nodded, took a sip of water and said, the honor is mine. Then the partner excused himself to greet other guests, leaving the two alone. Thang Ka also entered the VFC. Only Kwatkin and Halang remained in the corner with a slightly awkward atmosphere. Halang spoke first. My internship here is almost over, and I'm preparing to return home. I really hope to work at your Kinmon group. But from Kwatkin's perspective, he just saw a big apple coming toward him, making him quickly step back. The gentleman politely said, That's great. Our company warmly welcomes talented people like you. Halang smiled softly. He knew he had an attractive appearance and also knew how to make his smile look better in others' eyes. Halang smiled, revealing his dimples. Kwatkin looked at the young man in front of him and couldn't help but admit that the other had a very pleasing appearance. From the outside, there really was nothing to criticize. Seeing Kwatkin's glass was empty and Thang Ka was not here, Halang took the initiative to suggest, Your glass is empty, sir. Let me get you another one. Kwadkin waved his hand to refuse. No, need wait for my secretary to come back. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a man approaching with a glass of wine. It was none other than Duchio, our third boss. In the past 2 days, Kwadkin had met Duchio 3 times. He noticed that when outside, Duchio never revealed his scent signal. This surprised Kwadkin greatly because he had already smelled Duchio's scent signal before. Clearly, Duchio's scent signal was so strong, yet normally he never showed even a hint of it outside like an omega with a disease. An indifferent gaze, a bland body, but the truth was completely opposite. Kwadkin accepted the wine from Duchio, took a sip, and greeted Boss Chiu. You came today too. Duchio nodded and replied, what a coincidence, seeing this omega suddenly showing killing intent. Halang felt very uncomfortable inside, but maintained a standard smile on his face. Why don't we make some introductions? Is this person a friend of Boss Kwat? Duchio bluntly replied, not considered a friend. Just a typical blind date relationship. Kwadkin, a man who had seen enough of life's big matters, was directly horrified by Duchio's introduction. He spat out the wine he was about to drink. Duchio introduced to Halang that Halang and Kwadkin had a typical blind date relationship. This statement directly scared a man like Kwadkin to death. Hearing this, Halang was also shocked, mouth agape. Only then did he become cautious and carefully observe Duchio. It was undeniable that Duchio was a beauty, but like an ice statue, lifeless and not at all seductive. Not even a hint of fragrance to attract the opposite sex. On Duchio, there was only a very faint shampoo scent. Halang silently thought, this probably isn't Duchio's scent signal, right? If it really was his scent signal, it was boring indeed. After assessing his opponent, Halang couldn't help but laugh because he thought someone so dull couldn't attract any alpha's interest, especially not an alpha with a strong scent signal like Kwadkin. Halang was very relieved and stepped closer to Kwadkin, smiling and saying, surely you're joking. An outstanding man like Boss Kwat also needs to go on blind dates. Before Kwadkin could answer, Duchio took the lead. I'm outstanding too, so I need blind dates as well. Why doesn't he need to? Duchio's tone was always like that, neither warm nor cold, emotionless. This made listeners feel uncomfortable. This directly stunned Halang, but successfully made Kwadkin laugh out loud. Halang could only smile awkwardly and say, I think if Boss Kwat wants to find a lover, there would definitely be many lining up to be chosen. Duchio thought for a moment and said seriously, I also have people lined up on my side. Halang didn't expect Duchio to answer like that and didn't know what to say for a moment. On the contrary, Kwadkin said to Duchio, may I ask where I can register to line up? Just as Duchio was about to say something, his phone rang. Pulling out the phone and seeing it was a work call, he frowned and answered, hello, then turned and left. Taking advantage of this, Halang found an excuse to approach Kwadkin boss. Kwat, would you like to go upstairs and enjoy the city at night? This is the best observation deck in the city. Kwadkin hesitated, then nodded before leaving, still reluctantly watching Duchio's back. At that moment, he suddenly noticed the barrier patch on Duchio's neck. After finishing his work, Duchio immediately hung up and returned to Kwadkin and Halang's place. But when he looked back, he found that the two had disappeared, and he looked around the room but couldn't see them anywhere. Hwati, who had been hiding in a corner observing, stepped out and patted Duchio on the shoulder, saying, it seems like those two went up to the rooftop. Should we follow them and check it out? Duchio confidently replied, no need. We shouldn't cling too tightly to clients. Hwati helplessly said, but one of them is an alpha with a strong scent trait, and the other is an omega ramjang. They both clearly went up to the rooftop together. Aren't you afraid something might happen between them? Duchio calmly analyzed what could possibly happen. Are they going to register their marriage on the rooftop or what? Hwati was very surprised, but what if those two do get close to each other? Duchio rolled his eyes. So what if they get close? Does it affect the assets? Hwati scratched his head in confusion. It's not like that. You only care about assets. You don't care about anything else. Hearing the question, Duchio was also puzzled. If not, why would I chase all the way to America? At that moment, Hwati suddenly realized he had forgotten Duchio was not an ordinary person. Finally, Hwati asked, so what should we do now? Go back to the hotel and rest. Duchio answered, oh, since we're here, let's socialize a bit. After all, this is a high-end banquet that can help me expand my network. Although Duchio disliked interacting with others when it came to business, even an introvert had to be extroverted, and there was no other way for him. Duchio immediately switched into extroverted mode, full of energy, and charged toward the crowd. Watching this sudden change, Hwati was stunned, then realized that Duchio was not only abnormal, but also someone whose mind was solely focused on his career. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Kwatkin's thoughts had already soared to the clouds, his mind full of the rose fragrance of the great beauty. Duchiu, a workaholic, focused only on his career, even as an introvert who disliked socializing, would become extroverted when it came to business. Duchiu was happily chatting with a partner when suddenly a familiar voice rang in his ear. Duchiu, you're here too. Hearing the familiar voice, Duchiu turned around to see the acquaintance, Feng Dinwei. Raising his glass toward Duchiu, Duchiu stepped forward and clinked glasses with him and the other person. Director Feng. Long time no see. Feng Dinwei smiled and said, Kid, you're not interesting at all. Duchiu looked at him puzzled, and Feng Dinwei curiously said, I heard you recently went on a blind date but didn't tell me a word. Duchiu shook his head. 8 words were as good as not speaking at all. Feng Dinwei shrugged. That blind date thing, not trustworthy at all. Better to talk business and show yourself in front of your father. Duchiu nodded, but his attitude clearly was just to please the other person, because Duchiu had thought the same before. He believed that as long as he performed well in his career, he would gain his father's recognition. But the truth was completely the opposite. No matter how hard Duchiu tried, he could never compare with the influence of the alpha younger brother Kia in his father's eyes. Feng Dinwei winked at Duchiu. All right, I'll introduce you to a major client if you manage to cooperate successfully. Remember to treat me to a meal. Upon hearing major client, Duchiu's eyes lit up like headlights. Every time he met a major client, he was like a kitten seeing salmon almost meowing in delight. Feng Dinwei turned and led Duchiu to an alpha, introducing him as Cao Bahua, CEO of Fanglong Company, a truly talented young man. As soon as Julio entered the party, he noticed the flashy-dressed alpha Kia. The reason was nothing special, just that he rarely saw an alpha dressed so gaudily. Duchiu shook hands with Cao Bahua, who smiled at him and said, Director Feng, why didn't you tell me that Director Xiao is such a beautiful omega? Only the scent is a bit faint, hard to detect the signaling scent. Feng Dinwei laughed and replied, Her personality is as bland as a beta, nothing can affect her. Duchiu only smiled without responding, deliberately shifting the conversation back to business. Director Feng raised his eyebrows at Cao Bahua. See, she only talks business. Then Duchiu and Cao Bahua began discussing cooperation, taking their time to talk about many projects. After exchanging business cards and saying goodbye, waiting for Cao Bahua to turn and leave, Duchiu finally breathed a sigh of relief, considering he now had a connection with Feng Long. This party wasn't a waste after all, and if he could cooperate with Cao Bahua while also connecting Kwatkin's Jingmen with Feng Long, Duchiu definitely wouldn't have to chase Kwatkin everywhere anymore. Instead, Kwatkin would be chasing after him. I wanted to invite you to dinner and give you a gift. I feel like today's gains are enough. Duchiu was about to leave when suddenly his phone rang. Duchiu answered, and the voice on the other end, slightly hoarse and seductive, said, President Osho. The call startled Duchiu, who stood frozen for half a day before stammering back, Oh, President Kwat. Kwatkin replied, It's me. Because of you, I had to drink half a glass of wine and now I can't drive. Take me home. Duchiu kindly offered Kwatkin a drink, but unexpectedly he clung to him afterward. The man used drunkenness as an excuse to ask Duchiu to take him home. Duchiu asked suspiciously, I already gave you a glass earlier. Didn't you drink it? The man replied, No, that was pear tea switched by my secretary. Duchiu gradually understood and smiled wryly. So, that's it. He thought to himself, how could someone drink pear tea instead of champagne at a party? Strange. But thinking it over, this alpha was carrying a suppressant, so this wasn't so strange after all. I didn't understand the situation. Sorry for causing you trouble, Duchiu said. Kwatkin responded, Drive me home. Duchiu said, I've been drinking too. Kwatkin then asked, So how are you getting home? Duchiu replied that his assistant was driving him home. Kwatkin said, Then take me home too. His tone was so casual, as if Duchiu was his assistant. Duchiu thought Kwatkin already had a secretary, so how could he not have a driver? Even if Kwatkin didn't have a secretary, taking a taxi would be convenient. Why ask to ride with him? After thinking it over, Duchiu could only conclude that Kwatkin wanted to sleep with him. Soon after, Kwatkin came out and Hua got in the driver's seat. Looking in the rearview mirror at Kwatkin, Hua exclaimed, Honestly, your blind date is pretty handsome. Duchiu glanced at him in the passenger seat and replied, He's okay. Hua sighed. And you still say that's just barely meeting the boss Ducao's request. Duchiu replied, I don't have any appearance requirements. Finally, Hoa understood that Du Xiu was choosing a client, not a partner. At that moment, Quatkin walked over and lightly tapped the car window. Driver Lum Toi Hua got out to open the door for him and professionally asked where the boss wanted to go. Quatkin looked at Hua, his purple shirt dazzling and his tone flirtatious. He found it interesting that someone as serious as Du Xiu had an assistant with such a personality. Quatkin said, I'm hitching a ride with you guys. It's late, so don't make a detour. Whatever hotel you're at, I'll go there. Maybe I can still book a room. Du Xiu caught the hint and said, if you don't mind, you can stay in my room for one night. Quatkin smiled. If General Manager Xiu doesn't mind, neither do I. Du Xiu looked at Quatkin through the rearview mirror and Quatkin's gaze met his. Du Xiu's heart suddenly beat faster. The atmosphere in the car turned strange. Ho almost blurted out a patriotic phrase hearing their conversation. What is this? Isn't this a signal for a forenointing date? Hoa pressed the gas pedal, feeling the car was moving too fast, meaning the progress between those two was too quick. The car quickly arrived at the hotel. Actually, Quatkin was staying there too. They had chosen this hotel to create an accidental meeting opportunity, but unexpectedly they ended up driving home together. You guys stay at this hotel? Du Xiu asked. Why? Quatkin answered, nothing. I didn't say clearly I was staying here too. Tonight I just have to squeeze in with General Manager Xiu a bit more. Hoa thought to himself, squeeze where? Du Xiu wished Hoa good night, then led Quatkin into his room. Quatkin followed Du Xiu inside, and maybe because his shirt was too tight, he unbuttoned the collar. Du Xiu held the remote to open the floor-to-ceiling glass curtains. Quatkin also followed Du Xiu's gaze out the window. You're on too low a floor. My view from higher up is much better. Du Xiu pretended to be naive. So Quat, General Manager, is here too. Quatkin nodded. That's right. Let's go up to my floor to see the beautiful view. Du Xiu looked at Quatkin seriously and said, I'm not a casual person. Quatkin laughed. Then why did you tie yourself up in the bathroom that day? Du Xiu didn't expect him to suddenly bring that up. That was probably the most embarrassing and awkward moment of Du Xiu's life. But there was no sign of embarrassment on his face. He said coldly, I'm not a casual person. Quatkin took a step closer. Du Xiu's heart pounded wildly. This was a feeling he'd never had before. He suspected he was being controlled by pheromones, which was scary even though he had taken suppressant medicine. At that moment, he felt Quatkin's breath behind his ear. Then Quatkin bit Du Xiu's neck. Du Xiu was so startled he almost jumped up, but realized the teeth didn't actually touch his skin. Quatkin comforted him. Don't be afraid, I'm not a casual person either. Then he bit open the patch stuck on Du Xiu's neck. As soon as the patch was removed, Quatkin smelled the sharp scent of roses and honey flooding his nose. Sure enough, it was the same scent from that day. Then there was a 5,000-word omitted section. After some time, Du Xiu lay exhausted on the bed thinking about what just happened. So this is what it feels like to do that. Gradually, Du Xiu understood a little. It was an uncontrollable pleasure. He wanted to get up, but suddenly his waist ached painfully. Seeing this, Quatkin immediately hugged Du Xiu and asked where he wanted to go. Du Xiu replied, I want to clean up. Quatkin chuckled softly. Clean what? Won't you just get dirty again soon? Du Xiu's face instantly flushed. No way. Quatkin glanced at Du Xiu and said, Who said no? Du Xiu gently held his sweaty forehead, admitting defeat. I can't. Quatkin raised his eyebrows slightly to restrain himself, then smiled, picked Du Xiu up, and took him to the bathtub. Du Xiu was surprised. What are you doing? Quatkin explained. Obviously, whoever makes the mess has to clean it up. Du Xiu soaked in the tub, glancing at Quatkin's body. I can't play with you anymore. Du Xiu looked down. His mind said no, but what was below was hard to deny that was the truth. Finally, Quatkin laughed and left the bathroom while Du Xiu sighed with relief, wondering why things had gotten this far. Damn pheromones, how hateful. Just then, the bathroom door suddenly opened. Du Xiu reflexively covered his chest, tensely turned to look at the door, and saw Quatkin stepping closer. Du Xiu wanted to stop him and said he already said no, but Quatkin didn't stop and kept moving toward Du Xiu. When Du Xiu tried to block him, he saw Quatkin holding a syringe. Was that his suppressant, the kind injected into the arm? Du Xiu reflexively covered his butt and nodded. Quatkin injected the suppressant into his own arm, then looked at Du Xiu with a smile. You're not afraid of me anymore. Du Xiu wondered if he was really scared. Quatkin took out essential oil. Let me massage you, General Manager Chiu, to help relax your muscles. Du Chiu laughed and cried, I don't dare. Kwat Kin casually tossed the used syringe in the trash. Why wouldn't you dare? I'm just a eunuch perfectly suited to serving others. Du Chiu suddenly burst out laughing. Then I won't be polite. Kwat Kin looked at Du Chiu's smile, his heart skipped a beat. To keep Du Chiu from noticing anything unusual, he quickly took the essential oil, poured it into his palm, and skillfully began massaging Du Chiu. Du Chiu closed his eyes sleepy. His body felt extremely relaxed, but his mind was in chaos. He had flown across the Pacific to get here to find a client, and now the client was massaging him. Like this count as a successful pursuit. But then he thought back to when Kwat Kin first met him in the bathroom. Maybe at that time he already thought Du Chiu was very playful. Now he had come all the way to America. They had only met twice, but already slept together. Didn't that just prove that idea? Thinking this made Du Chiu even more uneasy, to the point that someone's hand began moving restlessly on his body. He didn't realize it, thinking maybe the other person was just playing around. Maybe just wanted him as a lover. Du Chiu suddenly opened his eyes and said, I'm not a casual person. Kwat Kin froze, seeming not to understand why Du Chiu said that. Suddenly the phone rang. Kwat Kin turned away to take a call and said, All right, I'll head back immediately. After speaking, he took the phone into the bathroom. Mr. Chiu, I have to return to the country now. See you again. Du Chiu was startled and immediately ran off. Wasn't it supposed to be just playing around? He suddenly stood up, but then reconsidered, thinking he shouldn't appear too eager in front of a client. He lowered his voice and asked, Don't you have anything to say? Kwat Kin thought for a moment, then replied, I'm not a casual person either. After both confirmed they were not casual people, something indescribable still happened. Kwat Kin returned to the country alone, leaving Du Chiu behind at the hotel. Du Chiu sadly recounted this to Hua Ti. When Hua Ti learned Kwat Kin had gone back to the country, she exclaimed in surprise, So he just left like that? Du Chiu nodded. Hua Ti curiously asked, Did Kwat Kin leave alone? Du Chiu hesitated suspiciously, asking, Who else could he have left with? Hua Ti bluntly said, That guy named Ha Lung. That Omega is pretty flirtatious. I think he won't easily let your client go. He might even try to make a move on your client. Du Chiu didn't pay much attention. Hua Ti asked in surprise, Why? Even though I don't like him, I have to admit he's a very charming Omega. Du Chiu recalled and felt Ha Lung looked really foolish. He seemed low in IQ, but Hua Ti reminded him, Alphas don't care about things like intelligence when choosing an Omega. Sometimes they even prefer Omegas who look clueless. Du Chiu said to Hua Ti, Kwat Kin already rejected Ha Lung and came to my room. Hua Ti was stunned. Maybe he played around with Ha Lung first before coming to see you. Du Chiu found it hard to believe. Is that possible? Hua Ti seriously replied, He's an extremely passionate alpha star. It's totally possible. Du Chiu didn't know what to say. After a moment, Hua Ti added, Anyway, this society favors alphas too much and is harsh on omegas, so it's better to be cautious. The next day after returning to the country, Du Chiu immediately went to the company. This fit perfectly with his style. When entering the company, he saw Du Hai laughing and chatting happily with an Omega. Du Chiu frowned but tried to keep calm, stepped forward and called out, Dad. Du Hai saw his son arrive and didn't avoid him. You're back. Is everything okay in the U.S.? Du Chiu nodded his eyes, briefly passing over the Omega, with little expression as if looking at a tree. The Omega politely greeted, Hello, General Director. Under me is a new intern, Hadao. Hearing that name, Du Chiu immediately thought of Ha Lang. Hadao saw him. Chiu looked surprised, then asked, Do you think there's something wrong with this name? Du Chiu replied, Nothing. It suits you well. Du Hai laughed and said, Exactly, Dad thinks so too. Little Dao smells like fresh peach. Right, Dad plans to transfer Little Dao to work under you. Please help him out more. Du Chiu nodded, then said a few polite words before returning to his office. Soon after, Du Chiu made a phone call, telling the other party to let General Director Ung come to Du Hai's office in half an hour. In his mind, Du Chiu thought, Dad really likes causing trouble in the office, doesn't he? He probably doesn't mind being caught by his son, right? At that moment, Du Chiu's phone received a message. It was Kwat Kin asking, Are you free at 9 p.m. tomorrow? Du Chiu's heart raced. He quickly replied, Free. Immediately after he received a reply from Kwat Kin. Seeing the message, Du Chiu's heart fluttered wildly again. He didn't know how to reply, so he nervously called Hua Ti to ask for advice. Is this a date invitation? Hua Ti answered, Of course it's a date invitation. If not, then what? If it's not a date, it's an invitation for that kind of thing. No sweet talk, no invite to watch a movie. Straight to the hotel room, that's an invitation. Du Chu's mood instantly became complicated, but he said he's not a casual person. Huati laughed after hearing that. Have you ever seen someone not casual who's already in bed by the third meeting? Du Chu replied, yes, me. Huati was speechless, not knowing how to respond. So you two really are a perfect match. Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness. Du Chu pretended not to notice Huati's silent brooding. All right, I won't bother you anymore. I still have to meet a client later. Huati shook his head, saying your old alpha boss isn't trustworthy. He won't help you get promoted. Why is that? Then why do you keep working hard for him? Du Chu calmly replied, I'm not working for him. Actually, this time the client I'm meeting has nothing to do with the Du Group's business. I heard from Fung Din Wei that Cao Bahua had returned, so I immediately contacted him and arranged dinner. Du Chu arrived early. Cao Bahua was also very punctual. This time, he wasn't wearing a flashy shirt smelling of cologne, but a crewneck sweater and striped athletic pants, looking more like a trendy young man than a big boss. Mr. Cao, please have a seat. Du Chu stood up, intending to pull out a chair for him. Cao Bahua was startled. No, stay where you are, don't move. Then he helped pull out the chair for Du Chu, saying it should be the Alpha helping the Omega with the chair. Du Chu thanked him, praising President Cao, you truly are a gentleman. Cao Bahua shrugged with a smile. Just okay. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down, saying, all right, get to the point. Why did you come to see me? Du Chu said, President Cao, you really are straightforward. I won't beat around the bush either. I'm here to discuss Kinmon Company's hedge fund. Cao Bahua exclaimed, but aren't you from Du Group? Why are you discussing Kinmon's business then? Du Chu replied, the CEO quit of Kinmon and I are. At that point, Du Chu suddenly stopped. Images that made one blush and heart race involuntarily flashed through his mind. Du Chu shook his head and continued, just friends. Cao Bahua pretended to be very surprised. You really are someone who values friendship. Du Chu's tongue suddenly tasted bitterness, but he still smiled. Of course, there's also some profit involved. That night, the two talked very late. After saying goodbye to Cao Bahua, Du Chu didn't want to go home. So he went to Huati's house. But as soon as Huati saw him standing at the door smelling of alcohol, he immediately got angry. Do you have to drink when doing business? Du Chu replied, if you're party A, you can drink whatever you want. After showering and changing into clean clothes, Du Chu sat in the living room. Huati asked how the negotiations went. Du Chu answered very well. Next time I'll bring Quat Kin along. If successful, this will be a big contract. Huati poked his forehead with a finger and said, no matter how big it is, it doesn't concern you. Du Chu couldn't argue because even the contracts he helped his father negotiate didn't concern him, especially since this one is for someone whose relationship is unclear. He remembered Quat Kin's message again. Turning to Huati, he asked what to do tomorrow. Du Chu even thought Quat Kin was inviting him to a hotel to play a game not meant for kids. Unexpectedly, when the door opened, the person inside was the other party's parent. Thinking about the appointment tomorrow, Du Chu suddenly panicked. He hurriedly sought help from Huati, wondering if going to the hotel would turn him into an FVKB. Huati told him even FVKBs have a chance to become the dominant. You two cooperate so well, the chances of success are still very high. Sometimes alphas are impulsive animals. If you trigger his animal instincts and even get marked temporarily, won't that make it official? So Du Chu asked for his opinion. Huati told him to start with the outfit and handed him a suit of armor. After a while, Huati brought a box, saying he hadn't used this yet, giving it to Du Chu, first hoping it would help him perform well. Du Chu opened the box and was stunned when he saw what was inside. Those torn pieces of cloth, Huati retorted that it's a design with a raised back. Du Chu felt it violated ergonomics. Huati pinched your cheek and said, how could Alpha love you so much and not want to be apart from you? Anyway, Huati is the one who has already tried it. Du Chu obediently listened to him. The next day, Du Chu wore that outfit and texted Huati asking if he could really wear it. Huati told him to rest assured he wouldn't have to wear it for long. Du Chu sighed. That was all he could do. Hopefully this armor can really help him close the deal with the client. Then he drove to the hotel. As soon as he got out of the car, he felt pain in his butt. This outfit is really uncomfortable. He informed the receptionist that the room had been reserved. The receptionist led him upstairs. It was a private room, not a hotel room. Du Chu was stunned and thought, could Quat Kin be playing big like this? Well, it's fine since he wanted to finish quickly anyway. After the door opened, he started to take off his tie. Quat Kin said, let's get straight to it. When he saw Du Chu arrive, Quat Kin was very happy. Immediately introduced him to his parents as the person he had told them about. Unexpectedly, the scene was like that. Du Chu quickly tightened his tie again, feeling really embarrassed. Taking advantage of the phone ringing, Du Chu hurriedly changed the subject. Sorry, it might be a message from a client. I have to check a bit. He opened it. It was a gossip message from Hoa. Seeing the scene in front of him, Dushio just wanted to dig a hole and hide. No wonder these two aren't casual about anything. The parents were still in the living room. The two of them had directly pulled each other into the bathroom and started playing an adult-only game. When Kwok-kin saw Duchio arrive, he was very happy and quickly invited him to sit. Duchio replied shyly. As soon as he sat down, he felt the power of the armor. His whole body almost lost control of his expression. Then he took a deep breath to adjust his mood. Uncle Aunt, is this your first time meeting? What CEO? Why didn't you tell me earlier? So I came empty-handed without any gifts. Seeing how polite he was, Kwok-kin's parents were very pleased with this daughter-in-law. Kwok-kin was immediately teased. No need to prepare anything, my parents are pretty easygoing. At this moment, Kwok-kin's mother started greeting Duchio. To get to know each other better, Duchio began to introduce himself. Although he usually wasn't favored by elders, he could still handle dealing with clients comfortably. If it weren't for this armor, he would be even more impressive. At this point, Kwok-kin noticed Duchio wasn't feeling well. He approached and asked if he was uncomfortable anywhere. Duchio's face immediately flushed, and he whispered to him that he wanted to go to the bathroom. Kwok-kin pointed that way and said the private room has a bathroom over there. Duchio hurried over. After he went inside, Kwok-kin's mother was very surprised. Why do you feel like you two aren't very familiar? Still calling each other CEO this and CEO that. If I didn't know better, I'd think you two are business partners, not a couple about to get married. Kwok-kin replied that there's a big difference between wife and business partner. Kwok-kin's mother was a bit displeased and said it must be different with more tenderness and care. Hearing that, Kwok-kin prepared to check if Duchio was okay. Kwok-kin's father felt that wasn't right. Why would you follow someone into the bathroom? Aren't you embarrassed? But mother thought differently. After marriage, what can a couple do? How could they be embarrassed? Kwok-kin didn't feel embarrassed at all. Suddenly knocking on the door inside, Duchio heard the knock and panicked quickly, saying, "Please don't come in." He hurriedly put his clothes back on, but by then the door was already open. Seeing Duchio dressed like that, Kwok-kin was stunned, then turned around and locked the door. His eyes never left Duchio's armor. Wearing it like this, Duchio was both embarrassed and angry. "Why did you come in?" Kwok-kin looked at his armor and gave a thumbs up. Kwok-kin is so fashionable, who would have thought? Duchio blushed with embarrassment and hurriedly tried to push him outside, but Kwok-kin held him tightly. Outside, the parents were eavesdropping, straining to hear the sounds from the room. Kwok-kin's father felt something was off. Meanwhile, his mother remained calm and composed. "Forget about us. Just prepare some food. Do you want to eat? It might take a while." Duchio wore his combat uniform to meet Kwok-kin, but Kwok-kin hadn't told him beforehand that it was a meeting with the parents. This made Duchio feel extremely awkward. He immediately looked for an excuse to escape into the bathroom. Seeing Duchio gone for a long time without returning, Kwok-kin went to look for him. Unexpectedly, when he opened the door, he witnessed a side of Duchio he had never seen before. Kwok-kin gave a thumbs up, teasingly, "I didn't expect Director Chiu to have such a trendy style." Duchio embarrassedly tried to chase him out, but unexpectedly, Kwok-kin locked the door and grabbed the back of his neck. He forcefully tore apart Duchio's adhesive patch. "I'm not only not going out, I want to come in." Duchio immediately pushed him away and lowered his voice to question, "What do you want to do? Your parents are still out there." But Kwok-kin pulled him into his arms again and whispered, "They can understand. It's just the high pheromone levels." Then he helped Duchio take off the combat uniform that was making him uncomfortable. Duchio was momentarily stunned, unable to react. "Why are you spacing out? Didn't you want to take it off?" "Even though my pheromones are extremely strong, I still know when to do what, especially when Director Chiu is here for something important." After saying that, he winked at Duchio. Duchio blushed, and after a moment shyly nodded, feeling both embarrassed and annoyed at himself for overthinking. After Kwok-kin helped him remove all the cumbersome clothing, Duchio finally breathed a sigh of relief. While adjusting his clothes, he muttered, "Why say things that cause misunderstandings? Don't you know that sometimes a slip of the tongue can cause big trouble for others?" While Duchio was fixing his clothes, Kwok-kin casually tidied up his stuff. He picked up the necklace, staring blankly at where it touched Duchio's gland. Then instead of putting it in the bag, he slipped it straight into his pants pocket. Leaving the bathroom, Duchio awkwardly apologized to Kwok-kin's parents, uncle, and aunt. "Sorry for keeping everyone waiting." Kwok-kin's father snorted coldly. "You two really took a long time in the bathroom." In his heart, he secretly thought maybe it was a bit too quick. Kwok-kin's parents exchanged a suspicious glance. "That fast? The food isn't even served yet." Kwok-kin's mother whispered to her husband, "Could our son have a problem?" She hurriedly explained it's because Du wasn't feeling well, so naturally it took some time. Yes, Du immediately lowered his head in embarrassment and softly said, I really was rude. Kwat Kin's mother smiled comfortingly. It's okay, it's okay. Please sit down. In her heart, she thought she needed to nourish her son properly. After dinner, Kwat Kin's mother took Du hand and asked, Did you drive here? Yes, Aunt, but I'm not feeling well. Maybe your son can drive me home. Du face instantly flushed red, shaking his head to refuse. No, no need. I've been embarrassed enough today. Kwat Kin's mother patted his shoulder and said with a smile, Let me take you home first. As they left, she patted her son's shoulder and gave a subtle, encouraging signal. You have to do well this time. She murmured, I can only help you this far. Kwat Kin was vaguely confused. Kwat Kin drove Du home in Du car. Both were silent, the car so quiet you could hear their breathing clearly. Kwat Kin had intended to turn on music to lighten the mood, but felt it wasn't necessary. So he casually chatted with Du. What do you think of my parents? Du, sitting in the passenger seat, glanced at Kwat Kin. Your uncle and aunt are very nice. Kwat Kin smiled again. You like quietness. Don't you find my mom too noisy? And don't you think my dad is too strict with you? Du adjusted his posture seriously and said, Not at all, really not. You can be honest with me. This is sincere. Kwat Kin shrugged and lightly turned the steering wheel. Du glanced at him, knowing what he was thinking, then sighed and explained, If you knew how my family treated me, you would understand why I can't have opinions with gentle people like your parents. This topic piqued Kwat Kin's interest. He lightly tapped the steering wheel and said, Haven't you already investigated how your family treats you? They met through matchmaking. How could someone meet without getting to know each other first? Kwat Kin laughed. No matter what others say, it's just rumors. It's better to hear it straight from you. Du was a bit reluctant. He didn't like talking about his family with others, but Kwat Kin was an exception. Earlier, he brought it up because he knew that once he decided to marry Kwat Kin, he couldn't hide these things anymore. Even if he didn't want to talk about it, he had to make things clear to him. Here's the thing, my alpha father Du is somewhat well known. My omega father was a complete nobody. My biological father and Du lived together for years but never married. Later, Du married Dong Kan-yi, who came from a better family, and they had a son named Du like me. He also works at Du Corporation. You already know this, right? Kwat Kin asked, What about your biological father? Du eyes darkened. He passed away early. Actually, you've heard about this before. Du biological father was Unknown Du college boyfriend. After starting work, Du was favored by Boss Don, so he left Annong to marry Boss Don's son, Dong Kan-yi. When abandoned, Annong was pregnant, but still endured to give birth to Du. When Du was 15, Annong died of a serious illness. Because he was still a minor, the court ruled that Du had to raise him. Even though Dong Kan-yi was extremely unwilling, she had to accept Du into the Du family. You can imagine how he lived in that house, under the rejection of those two father and son Dus. Du twitched his fingers slightly. That's right. Do you want to meet Du and Dong Kan-yi? Yes, I definitely want to meet them. Also, where is your omega father buried? One day we'll visit together. After all, I wanted to meet your father once. Hearing this, Du was stunned for a long moment before responding, Wait a minute. Are you saying we're talking about marriage? No, Kwat Kin laughed. If not, then what? Du seemed frozen. So it's a success already. Really, the client actually finalized it. Could it be that this armor really works? Seeing him dazed, Kwat Kin asked, What's wrong? Not what you expected. Or do you want to slow things down? You can date first, watch movies, eat meals, get to know each other, then create some romance. Du said, No need, this is good enough. As long as you don't feel it's moving too fast. But inside Du was a bit panicked. But why did he decide to marry me so quickly? Kwat Kin asked back, Then why did you decide to marry me so quickly? But Du reluctantly said, Isn't this something you should be asking me? Du wanted to say, You're my best choice, but I'm not sure I'm your best choice. But he knew saying this would upset the other person. Talking to clients still requires some tact, so he said, Because you are outstanding. Kwat Kin laughed, You're outstanding too, as he drove to the front door. Du calmly said, Thank you, I've arrived. Kwat Kin gently stroked the back of Du neck. Du reflexively pushed him away. What do you want to do again? Don't be afraid, I don't mean that. I just want to kiss you. Seeing Du gloomy expression, Kwat Kin couldn't help but want to kiss him. Du finally realized he had feelings for Kwat Kin. After returning home, his mind was a mess. He didn't dare think further, just embarrassedly squatted down, curling up into a ball. Suddenly a voice called out, "Chiu Ni, you're back." It was Du Hai stepping out from the hallway. Du Chiu nodded to greet his father. "Hello, sir. Where are you going? Are you going out to eat with clients again?" Du Chiu nodded. "Getting more exposure to clients is good too." "You're doing very well," Du Hai praised lightly, patting his shoulder. Suddenly his tone changed. "About the intern your father mentioned before Hadao has already come to see you, right?" Du Chiu didn't expect his father to bring up Hadao. He acted as if he knew nothing. Du Hai cleared his throat twice and said, "I think this kid is pretty sharp. We could keep him." It sounded like he was complimenting Hadao, but in reality, it was more like reminding Du Xiu to approve the paperwork for him. Du Xiu didn't just go along with his father, but replied tactfully, "On the surface, he seems smart, but we still have to see if he fits in your department. If not, he can try another department. He'll definitely find a suitable position." Du Hai smiled coldly. "Maybe you don't know Hadao has already offended Du Ung. Outside your department, he has nowhere else to go." Du Hai had said so much, what else could Du Xiu say? But he still didn't accept immediately and feigned innocence to ask, "Really? He's only been at this company half a day and already offended Du Ung." Du Hai obviously couldn't explain in detail how Hadao offended Du Ung, so he just said other things. "You don't need to worry about that. Just quickly, move Hadao to your department." Du Xiu quickly nodded. "Yes, I understand." The next morning, the four family members ate breakfast together. No one mentioned Hadao's matter, but Du Xiu guessed Du Ung must have immediately reported it to Duan Kenyi. On Duan Kenyi's side, he probably wasn't happy either, but today he still looked gentle as usual, showing no signs of jealousy. He scooped a bowl of porridge for Du Hai and said gently, "You've lost weight lately. Is work too hard? I told you outside food has no nutrition. It's best to eat at home more." Hearing this, Du Xiu almost laughed. It seemed there was at least some reaction. Du Hai was a bit embarrassed then. Duan Kenyi glanced at Du Xiu and asked, "By the way, how's your matchmaking going?" "No progress." "Do you need me to introduce someone? Although I'm not in matchmaking, I know quite a few people." "Thank you, CEO Duan, but actually it's not necessary." Du Ung cut him off. Why wouldn't it be necessary?" "Don't be stubborn. With pheromones like mine, finding a partner won't be easy. Maybe lower your standards a bit. Find someone with compatible pheromones and a family background similar to your father's." Du Xiu felt unhappy hearing Du Ung mention his father, but kept it to himself. Duan Kenyi pretended to scold Du Ung, while Du Xiu adjusted his expression, then smiled gently and said, "Actually, Quatkin's parents also want to meet CEO Dawn and President Hai, but I'm not sure when you both are free." As soon as he said this, the smug smile on Du Ung's face immediately froze. Duan Kenyi was stunned too, but Du Hai looked very pleased. He said, "Really, that's great. Why didn't you say so earlier? I can arrange time today." After finishing, he thought a moment and continued, "But since you're only telling me now, we'll have to wait 2 more days." At first, Duan Kenyi was a bit stunned, but quickly regained composure and smiled. "President Hai is very busy, but I'm free. Maybe I can go meet them first." Du Xiu immediately felt alarmed inside. This wasn't good. Although he didn't know what Duan Kenyi would do, it was definitely not something good. After returning to the company, Du Xiu asked his assistant about Hadao's work ability. The assistant replied, "He's just an intern, so he's not assigned important tasks. Mostly small chores. As for professional skills, it's hard to tell yet, but he's quite quick, knows how to talk, and works hard." Hearing that, Du Xiu nodded. "All right." After going out for a while, Du Xiu received a call from Hua, whose tone sounded urgent. "Didn't you ask me to keep an eye on Quatkin's parents?" "Yes, is something wrong?" "You were right. Duan Kenyi has already approached them." Du Xiu clenched his fist. "I knew it. Duan Kenyi won't let you easily find the husband you want." When he learned Duan Kenyi arranged to meet Quatkin's mother, Du Xiu immediately realized something was wrong. Duan Kenyi didn't want Du Xiu to marry smoothly, so he proactively arranged to meet Quatkin's mother. But after several hours of contact, Quatkin's mother felt she and Duan Kenyi had no common ground at all. On the contrary, CEO Tenkia was quite good. The two of them got along very well, and even suggested letting the two kids meet each other. Quatkin's mother couldn't help but compare, "If I had to choose an in-law, then General Director Tan is indeed more suitable." After sending Quatkin's mother off, Duan Kenyi's lips slightly curled in satisfaction after causing chaos in this marriage arrangement. Just as he stepped out the door, Kwatkin's mother saw a familiar figure, Duchiu. Why did Duchiu smile and nod to greet her upon seeing her? "Why are you here?" Kwatkin's mother replied. "I came here to eat. Now I'm about to leave." Duchiu smiled and said, "What a coincidence. I'm here too. Let me drive you home." Of course, this wasn't a coincidence. Duchiu deliberately waited. He had already heard that Kwatkin's mother was invited for a meal and felt uneasy, so he immediately came over. But this meal was originally a gathering of the ladies. He couldn't join, so he waited downstairs to observe the situation. Duchiu was very respectful. He also wanted to probe some information from Kwatkin's mother to guard against any surprises. He asked her, "Who did you eat with?" Kwatkin's mother answered honestly without hiding anything. "Your Omega father arranged to meet me." Duchiu's face immediately turned pale. "Really? But your Omega father has already passed away." Hearing that, Kwatkin's mother was stunned, feeling more and more uneasy, a chill running down her spine. "It can't be true. Who exactly did you meet today?" While driving, Duchiu said, "Could it be a scammer?" Kwatkin's mother shook her head. "Impossible. The situation didn't seem like a scam at all." "Do you know the name Don Kun Ngi?" Duchiu immediately looked enlightened. "Are you talking about Director Don?" "Oh yes, I just couldn't recall for a moment." Kwatkin's mother looked at Duchiu suspiciously, and he just smiled lightly and replied, "He's the Omega father of my younger brother, so he's kind of like my Omega father too." This answer made Kwatkin's mother even more puzzled. "You and your brother weren't born from the same Omega father." "No, Chiu shook his head somewhat sadly. "My Omega father died early, and Director Don only later became acquainted with my Alpha father." He lowered his eyes and continued. "Normally I don't call him father, I just call him Director Don. So when you mentioned father, I was caught off guard." Hearing this, Kwatkin's mother nodded. "I see. I didn't expect Duchiu to have such a past," and a bit of pity welled up inside her. Very soon after, Duchiu took Kwatkin's mother home. Kwatkin's mother invited him inside to sit for a while. "It's late. I don't want to trouble you." "No problem. Come have a cup of tea before you go." Duchiu didn't refuse and followed her inside. No one was on the first floor. Kwatkin's mother led him upstairs to the second floor. When they reached the stair corner, they heard Kwat's father's voice. "I think the person you went to meet isn't a decent person." A sudden heavy rain forced Duchiu to spend the night at the blind date's house, also allowing him to feel a bit of warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. Previously, it was mentioned that Kwat's mother slowly led Duchiu upstairs. Just turning the corner, they heard Kwat's father's voice from upstairs. "I don't think the person you're meeting is decent at all." Hearing this, Duchiu was a bit embarrassed but consoled himself that it was okay. As a client, judging people by their expressions is normal. He adjusted his expression, cleared his throat twice naturally, and reminded the lady to go upstairs slowly. At the same time upstairs, Kwatkin and his father suddenly heard Duchiu's voice. They both stopped their conversation and looked simultaneously toward the top of the stairs. Shortly after, Duchiu and Kwat's mother appeared in their line of sight. Seeing Kwat's father, Duchiu immediately bowed respectfully. "Hello, uncle." Kwatkin laughed and stood up, his voice carrying some surprise. "Why did you suddenly come here without even a heads up?" Duchiu explained that he just happened to meet Kwat's mother on the way and took her home on the way. Hearing this, Kwat's father frowned slightly, his tone a bit displeased. "Taking a ride like this now? Why trouble you with a detour? It's already late. Going back and forth is inconvenient." Inwardly, he worried Duchiu might have overheard those words and felt a bit embarrassed. Seeing this, Kwat's mother immediately spoke up in defense. "I asked Duchiu to come have some tea." She glared at Kwat's father as if to say, "Do you have a problem with that?" But Kwat's father pretended not to notice and avoided his wife's gaze. Kwatkin saw this and quickly stepped forward to suggest to Duchiu, "How about you stay at our house tonight?" Kwat's father frowned slightly at this, while Kwat's mother gave a thumbs up to her son, clearly agreeing with the suggestion. Duchiu hesitated a little, but Kwat's mother immediately mediated, smiling as she invited him, "Duchiu, come sit here." Duchiu complied and went to sit beside Kwat's mother, and the two chatted casually. Kwat's mother seemed very interested in Duchiu's family background and casually asked a few questions. Duchiu knew this might be related to the arranged marriage between the two families, so he didn't hide anything and simply introduced his complicated family situation. Sitting beside him, Kwat's father frowned even more deeply, muttering, "This family relationship is really too complicated." Kwat's mother gave a cold laugh and glanced at him. "Aren't you still focused on reading your book? Why suddenly take an interest in someone else's family matters?" Kwat's father pursed his lips and then explained that he was referring to a complicated plot in the book. While they were talking, thunder rumbled outside, followed by a heavy downpour. Kwat's mother went to the window. looked at the rain outside, and with a hint of worry in her voice said, "With such heavy rain, maybe you shouldn't go home tonight." Quat's mother also nodded in agreement, but his father coldly glanced at Du Xiu, his eyes sharp like a pen on paper. Du Xiu felt that gaze and hesitated inside. Seeing this, Quat's mother smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, we have many guest rooms. Just stay. I heard there's a room for guests." Du Xiu reluctantly nodded in agreement. Quat's mother immediately led him to a room and thoughtfully reminded him, "You can sleep here tonight. There are new pajamas ready on the bed. By the way, do you want to call your family?" Du Xiu shook his head with a hint of self-mockery in his voice. "No need, they're too busy to care about me anyway." In fact, he had already secretly informed them, but now he deliberately played the role of a neglected child in front of Quat's mother as if he were invisible and unnoticed. "They don't pay attention to me, even if I don't go back, they won't know." Hearing this, Quat's mother's maternal instincts suddenly stirred, gently hugging him to comfort. "Be good, don't be sad. Just treat this as your home. If you need anything, just tell me." After washing up, Du Xiu lay on the bed feeling a bit confused, sleeping at the match's house, wearing his new pajamas, hugging the stuffed animal she gave him, drinking a glass of warm milk. All of this made him feel somewhat unreal. At first, he only wanted to stop Duan Kenyi's scheme, but now he unexpectedly felt a bit of warmth. Just as he was about to fall asleep, his phone suddenly vibrated. He picked it up and saw a message from Quat Kin, "Come to my room." Du teased himself silently, "I'm not someone who just goes anywhere like that." But 5 minutes later, he still sneaked to Quat Kin's door. He hesitated, unsure whether to knock, even considering turning away and leaving. Just as he was hesitating, the door suddenly opened. Quat Kin stood right there, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, eyes staring intently at Du Xiu. Du Xiu was about to say, "You called me here." But before he could finish, his wrist was grabbed tightly and pulled straight into Quat Kin's embrace. Du Xiu had no time to react and stumbled into Quat Kin's chest. Immediately, he smelled a faint scent of sandalwood, and his heart involuntarily beat faster. It was the first time Du Xiu came to the match's house and was warmly arranged by the match's mother to sleep in the guest room. However, just as he was about to rest, he received a suspicious message from Quat Kin. Du Xiu entered Quat Kin's room, but before he could say anything, his wrist was grabbed tightly, and he was immediately pulled into a warm embrace. A gentle sandalwood scent wafted into his nose, causing Du Xiu's heartbeat to quicken slightly. Faced with this unexpected intimacy, his cheeks flushed as he gently pushed Quat Kin away, whispering, "Why did you call me here?" Quat Kin smiled softly and replied, "Just to talk." Du Xiu frowned and whispered, "Do we have to go inside the room to talk?" As soon as he said this, he suddenly realized something was wrong. Why could he smell Quat Kin's pheromone? Thinking this, he suddenly felt tense and unconsciously touched his neck, the effect of the patch blocking. It seemed to be wearing off. "Earlier, you were so engrossed in talking with Quat Kin's mother that you forgot to change the patch." Quat Kin's eyes glanced at Du Xiu's hand as he covered his neck. He immediately raised both hands, a slight teasing smile at the corner of his mouth, stepped back and said, "Don't worry, I promise I won't touch your patch today, okay?" Du Xiu sighed helplessly. "Why did you call me here? Is it something important?" Quat Kin nodded gently but with a hint of seriousness. "It's rare for you to come here. I want to show you something." Then he turned and took a shoe album from the bookshelf and handed it to Du Xiu. Du Xiu obediently reached out to take it, guessing to himself, "What is this? Premarital asset verification? Or maybe company development plans, investment reports?" He seriously flipped through the album. When Du Xiu saw the contents inside, he was stunned. It turned out to be a photo album of Quat Kin. He softly hummed a signal for him to continue looking. Du Xiu's curiosity was piqued. He sat down and opened each page of the album to look through. The album recorded moments from when Quat Kin was a child up to the present, each photo telling a story. Du Xiu's eyes gradually softened, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curving into a smile. He seemed to understand more clearly the man sitting before him. Quat Kin sat nearby, arms crossed, watching Du Xiu intently without looking away. From his perspective, Du Xiu's long eyelashes fluttered gently with his gaze, making him even more beautiful. Du Xiu looked for a moment and couldn't help but burst out laughing. Quat Kin slowly moved closer. Du Xiu was still looking at the album, but suddenly felt a strong sandalwood scent invading his senses, his heartbeat immediately quickening. He hurriedly closed the album and said, "I think I'll look at this next time." Quat Kin bent down and looked at him for a long moment before saying, "Why is your face so red?" Then he raised his hand to touch his forehead. Du Xiu felt the slight warmth of the touch, making his face even redder. and his breathing became rapid. Seeing Du Xiu's flushed face and rapid breathing, Quadkin quickly helped him up, worriedly asking, "Are you running a fever?" Du Xiu tried to hold on to his last bit of reason and stubbornly denied, "I don't get fevers." Quadkin was stunned, but noticed something. Du Xiu's complexion was flushed, and a sweet scent of rich rose mixed with light, honey sweetness emanated from him, irresistible, as if begging to be plucked. Moved, Quadkin reached out to pluck, but Du Xiu didn't hesitate to slap away Quadkin's outstretched hand. Quadkin was surprised by the pain and withdrew his hand confused. Du Xiu emphasized again that he's not someone who acts recklessly. Quadkin replied softly, "I know." In Du Xiu's mind, Quad's cold father's face appeared, filling him with regret. Tonight, he absolutely must not let anything cross the line with Quadkin, or else his father's impression of him would only get worse. He realized from the start that maybe he shouldn't have entered Quadkin's room. He should have just stayed in bed and slept well. So Du Xiu decided, while his reason wasn't yet consumed by pheromones, to coldly say, "I'm leaving now," then resolutely turned and walked toward the door. Quadkin didn't stop him, just quietly watched his retreating back. However, just as Du Xiu reached to grab the doorknob, a knock came from outside the door, causing his heart to tighten and quickly pull back his hand. Quadkin also looked surprised and loudly asked, "Who's there?" Then Quad's father's voice came from outside the door. Du Xiu and Quadkin instinctively looked at each other, but both felt a rising sense of unease. Du Xiu frowned, exactly what you fear always comes. Quadkin tried to respond to his father that he had already gone to sleep and they could talk in the morning, but Quad's father was clearly not easily fooled. "Don't lie to me. How could you sleep so early?" Quadkin was somewhat helpless. Quad's father grunted, scolding, "I say too much, huh?" Opening the door, father didn't even finish speaking. Du Xiu felt like he was caught red-handed. The feeling was both embarrassing and frightening. The timid mouse looked toward Quadkin. This normally cold person now showed such a cute expression that Quadkin couldn't bear to look away. He reached out and hugged Du Xiu. Du Xiu wanted to struggle, but realized his whole body had no strength left. Could only let Quadkin drag him away. Duitru silently cursed that damn pheromone smell. Quadkin pushed Duitru onto the bed. As his back hit the soft mattress, his heart pounded wildly. Duitru again emphasized that he was not a casual person. Immediately after, a blanket was thrown over his head. Covered by the blanket soaked in Quadkin's pheromone scent, Du Xiu felt like he was nearly suffocating. Before long, Quadkin's face appeared from inside the blanket. Du Xiu's heart suddenly jumped to his throat. He looked at him in surprise. Just as he was about to speak, Quadkin quickly spoke first. "Xiu Tong, remember to hide well." After saying that, he got up from the bed and walked toward the door. He opened the door but didn't invite his father in. Ba Quat stood outside looking suspicious. "What's going on?" "Not planning to let me in." Ba Quatkin rubbed his eyes, pretending to be sleepy, and replied, "I really was asleep. I'm not lying to you." Ba Quat frowned, half convinced, half doubtful, and said, "If that's true, I'll just say 2 simple sentences." Ba Quatkin immediately interrupted. "Once I start talking, there's no such thing as only 2 sentences. Ba Quat wanted to say more, but saw the door close right in front of him. Quatkin's voice came from behind the door. "If it's not urgent, we'll continue this tomorrow morning." Ba Quat immediately grumbled in frustration. "Grown up and no longer listens." However, Quatkin paid no attention to his father's anger. He turned back to the bed, lifted the blanket, smiling as he asked Du Xiu, "Are you okay?" Although the air under the blanket wasn't suffocating, the blanket and pillow were soaked with Quatkin's pheromone scent. When Quatkin lifted the blanket, a strong scent of honey and roses rushed over him, like ocean waves, making him dizzy. Before he could recover, Du Xiu's hand tightly grasped his. With a strong pull, Du Xiu spun around and sat on top of Quatkin. He just sat there silently, and this action lasted quite a while. Quatkin was initially a bit stunned, then chuckled softly with a strange sparkle in his eyes. Clearly, he wasn't disgusted by the action. In fact, he was somewhat looking forward to it. Right after, Quatkin asked Du Xiu, and then he saw a pair of beautiful hands slowly moving over his body. The movement was like a cat stepping on him, but Quatkin only felt electricity run through his body. That strange feeling became unbearable for him. He grabbed the mischievous hand and suddenly turned to pin Du Xiu down. Quatkin bent down, pressing his forehead to Du Xiu, saying, "It's better if I do it." Immediately after, sounds from the room made people blush. Hearts beat as if the temperature of the whole room rose because of them. For the next scenes, we can only imagine. That battle lasted until nearly dawn before it ended. Duqiu lazily lay on the bed, his waist hurting back sore, not even bothering to move a finger. Huatkin massaged his waist while laughing and said, "This is the first time you've actively sat on top." That sentence was like a bomb that instantly exploded Duqiu's embarrassment. His face flushed bright red like a ripe tomato. Actively. What are you talking about? But Huatkin didn't think so. He continued, "Your waist needs more training. You couldn't handle even a little sway. I hope you can last longer." Duqiu was so embarrassed he suddenly sat up, which caused a sharp pain in his waist. He cursed inwardly. "How can I last like this?" But thinking it was at the customer's request, Duqiu tried to fulfill his duty. He asked, "I thought alphas wouldn't like that." Huatkin gave a vague smile and replied, "This case is different." Duqiu unconsciously asked, "What's different?" Huatkin looked at him, the corner of his mouth slightly upturned, and said, "You sitting on top is pretty good." Duqiu's face turned even redder. He asked, "Good? Where?" Huatkin leaned closer and quietly answered, "Because I get a better view." At this point, Duqiu's face was red all the way down to his neck. He asked, "Better view of what?" Huatkin leaned close to his ear and said, "Everything looks clearer from the top." Duqiu's head felt like it was about to explode. He pushed Huatkin away hard and said, I'm going to my room." Huatkin sat up. "Don't be so quick. We haven't finished looking through our photo album yet." Duqiu immediately became wary and thought to himself, again, the price to look through this album really is too high. So he hurriedly said, "Let's do it next time." Huatkin didn't push, but suddenly took out a mint candy and asked Duqiu, "Want one?" Duqiu immediately refused without hesitation. His mind suddenly went back to the first time between them, when Huatkin was also sucking on a mint candy. Duqiu curiously asked, Why do you like mint candy?" Huatkin smiled and answered, "People often say after doing that they smoke a cigarette, but unfortunately I've quit smoking, so I use mint candy to satisfy the craving." Duqiu was a bit surprised. "How long did you smoke before?" Huatkin thought for a moment and replied, "I wasn't serious about it, just smoked for fun when I was younger following others." Hearing that, Duqiu laughed. "I get it. When you were a kid, you imitated adults smoking to look cool, but once you grew up and became sensible, you struggled to quit." But Huatkin shook his head and said, "You misunderstood Duqiu." He explained that as a child he was very rational. He actually became addicted to smoking after he grew up. At that time, Huatkin was a fun trader, and to attract clients, he had to socialize frequently. Every day he came home smelling strongly of alcohol and cigarette smoke. Because of this, his father was furious. After hearing this, Duqiu understood clearly if even he, the son of Duhai, couldn't avoid drinking, then a young man without background like Huatkin had no room for arrogance in the brutal market competition. Huatkin continued, "Now it's better. If I want to quit smoking, I can hold it, and I drink moderately too." Suddenly he teased, "Luckily that phase of smoking and drinking ended early, so my body has no problems now, and I can still take good care of you happily." This immediately made Duqiu blush. He retorted, "What does that have to do with me?" His health was good for himself, but inwardly he wished this man could behave properly for just a little longer. After some lingering, their feelings gradually grew warm. Huatkin propped himself up from the head of the bed and grabbed the photo album. As he turned the minty breath wrapped around the person beside him, he opened his arms with eyes full of anticipation. Come here, let's look at the album together." Duqiu cautiously pulled back to the edge of the bed. Seeing his reaction, Huatkin seriously raised his right hand and swore, "I promise we're just looking at the album." Duqiu hesitated, his mind racing, but finally slowly moved closer. He really wasn't used to such intimate proximity. Every inch of skin was tense. Yet Huatkin seemed completely unaware, naturally wrapping his arm around Duqiu's shoulder, his warm palm pressing through the fabric against the skin as if trying to warm his very heart. Duqiu looked up at the man's clear jawline, his throat moving unconsciously. He thought that what should happen would happen. Refusing a client's request wasn't very polite either. After comforting himself, he gently rested his head on that firm chest. At first the muscles were tense, but under the warm heat they gradually relaxed. Huatkin lowered his head to look at the person in his arms, who was drowsy and sleepy. The corner of his lips unconsciously curved into a gentle smile, then he let out a soft sigh. "We don't even have a single photo together." That sentence made Duqiu's eyelashes tremble slightly. He responded indifferently, "Isn't that normal? We just met." Huatkin leaned close to his ear and whispered, but we're about to get married. But Du Chu's mind skipped a beat, falling in love, proposing getting married is the usual sequence. Yet they skipped straight from intimate contact to discussion of marriage. They really skipped too many steps, so Du Xiu suggested taking a photo together with a phone, but Quat Kin flatly refused. The reason given was that it's not a paper photo anyway. Does anyone these days still care about paper photos? Director Quat, you're not from ancient times, are you? Quat Kin opened his bedside drawer, took out a pen, then took a portrait photo of himself and carefully drew a winding rose in the blank space of the photo. Quat Kin gently touched the rose with his fingertip and said softly, "This is you, the rose at my throat." Du Chu choked up. The intimate nickname brought on by pheromones made his whole body uncomfortable, even feeling a bit cheesy. Quat Kin keenly noticed his feelings. "Don't like it," Du Chu frankly replied. "Not really." Quat Kin immediately offered, "Then you pick a pet name for me, which sounds better, Rose or Darling." Before he finished speaking, Du Chu decisively chose Rose. Quat Kin followed up, "Then what should I be called?" Du Chu blurted out Director Quat, which obviously couldn't satisfy the romantic side of Quat Kin. He suddenly had the idea to explain his name as Thorn, and affirmed that Thorn and Rose were a perfect match. Faced with Quat Kin's cheesy flirtation, the corner of Du Xiu's mouth twitched slightly, but he cooperated by calling him Thorn. Quat Kin suspected he was being retaliated against for deliberately giving him an unpleasant nickname. Half annoyed, half amused, he pressed Du Xiu's shoulder. "No, that name sounds boring." Du Xiu asked back. "Then what's a good name?" Quat Kin gave a sly smile and said, "Call me Darling," thinking he'd be rejected, but Du Xiu calmly replied, "Okay." Quat Kin was so unexpectedly happy dealing with him. Du Xiu continued, "If I say okay, then okay," thinking to himself, the request wasn't that hard. Meeting the client's request is the top priority. Quat Kin was stunned by this sudden happiness blinking at him. "Say it to me again." Du Xiu opened his mouth without hesitation or any emotion, darling. Quat Kin acted like he had just received a treasure, repeating the request over and over until Du Xiu showed impatience before finally stopping. Late at night, quiet and still, Quat Kin tossed and turned in bed. The person who endured so many awkward moments with him must really like him. After a fun night together, the next day, Du Xiu went to work as usual, but Tutik noticed Du Xiu was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. What does that prove? It proves Du Xiu didn't go home last night. Tutik quietly asked Du Xiu if Chu Tong's blind dates had been going well lately. Du Xiu frowned and didn't answer. Seeing Du Xiu's sharp, dagger-like gaze, Tutik quickly stepped back and didn't dare say more. Du Xiu sighed. "Last night, Quat Kin kept pestering me to call him Darling over and over. I'm about to become a broken record. Does that count as going well?" Du Xiu still had that cold, dagger-like gaze. Wherever that gaze landed, it was cold, and no one dared go near. Only the intern named Hadao came over cheerfully, trying hard to curry favor, and greeted him in the morning. Chu Tongwai bought another cup of coffee. "Do you want some?" Actually, Tutik had already made coffee for Du Xiu, but thinking about the ambiguous relationship between Hadao and his father, Du Xiu still accepted the coffee from Hadao and thanked her. Seeing Du Xiu accept the coffee, Hadao was even happier. "This cafe is a craft coffee shop, and very good. If you like, I'll bring some for you next time." Du Xiu declined. "No need to trouble yourself." Du Xiu glanced at the paper bag, wrapping the coffee, which had the name Langgu Craft Coffee written on it. Seeing that name, he unconsciously frowned. The word Lang, combined with Hadao, reminded him of Ha Lang, the person who once seduced Quat Kin. Du Xiu randomly pointed at the coffee cup with the cafe's name printed on it and asked Hadao, "Do you often come to this cafe for coffee?" Hadao smiled and replied, "Yes, it's the coffee shop my older brother opened." Du Xiu said, "Oh," and continued, "Is your older brother named Lang Ngu?" "No, his name is Ha Lang," Hadao responded with a smile. Du Xiu nodded, feeling curious. He didn't expect Ha Lang to open a coffee shop. Hadao casually said, "My brother is like me, just graduated from abroad and recently opened this coffee shop." Du Xiu nodded, seeing everything fit. Back then, Ha Lang appeared as an intern student. Now he's back home opening a coffee shop. The timing matches. It seems Hadao's brother really is Ha Lang. Du Xiu put down his coffee, thinking, "Who manages him? I don't care." But 5 minutes later, he still messaged Hua Thi to look up information about the relationship between Hadao and Ha Lang. Du Xiu explained to himself, "Right now, Quat Kin is my most important client. Obviously, Ha Lang came to compete for clients with me, so it's reasonable and logical for me to pay attention to him." Very quickly, Hua Thi called back, sounding like she had just uncovered a big scoop, saying, "Guess what I found out? The Omegas Ha Lang and Ha Dao are gold diggers. It's a family tradition, extremely professional, 3 generations in the sugar baby business. Du Xiu was a bit confused. Is there really such a profession? Huati smiled and said, every field has its own masters. Then suddenly asked, why did that big shot Tao go looking for your clients already? Want me to help you teach him a lesson? No need. Du Xiu stopped her. Why not? He'll lose face. Du Xiu replied softly, even a shameless third party like Hadao Dongkanyi doesn't care about. If Du Xiu cared too much about Ha Lang, then he'd really be less than Dongkanyi. And recently the project has been progressing quite well. There definitely aren't any problems. Du Xiu hung up and left the office telling Xiaoshi that he was going out for a business negotiation. Hadao immediately asked to come along to learn. Du Xiu agreed and let Hadao drive to the location. Following behind Du Xiu, Hadao asked, General Manager Qiu, are we meeting a client? Du Xiu softly said yes. That single word made Hadao curious about what kind of client it would be. Du Xiu arranged to meet Qiao Bahua at a hotel with Kuat Tin also there. As soon as Hadao saw the alpha with pheromone concentration, it was Kuat Tin. Her little heart pounded with silent admiration. Does General Manager Qiu usually get such good benefits? But Kuat Tin is young, and today he was dressed casually. Looking like a trendy college student, he stood up when he saw Du Xiu arrive. Finally, General Manager Qiu is here. Hadao watched in fascination. Cao Bahua also stood up and naturally said, General Manager Qiu, please come sit here. Du Xiu felt very apologetic seeing the 2 clients waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting. Unexpectedly, the next second, both clients pulled out chairs for him, which scared Du Xiu stiff. What should he do in this situation? He couldn't afford to offend either of them. Kuat Tin and Cao Bahua almost simultaneously stood and pulled out chairs for Du Xiu. When the 2 chairs were pulled out simultaneously, the expressions of all 4 people present changed in a subtle way. The atmosphere instantly became a bit awkward. This was truly the first time Du Xiu faced such a situation. He didn't know how to handle it properly. Hadao was used to this. She smiled and said, 2 Alpha CEOs are really gallant. They even pull out chairs for 2 Omegas like us. Hadao's remark came at just the right moment. Du Xiu silently nodded in approval and quietly said to Hadao, sit down. Du Xiu knew how to weigh things. Right now, the most important client is Kuat Tin, so he chose to sit in the chair that Kuat Tin pulled out. Hadao sat in the chair that Qiao Bahua pulled out. Then she turned and smiled sweetly at him. Thank you, CEO Qiao. Qiao Bahua waved his hand as if explaining something. Thank you. As long as you're an Omega, I'll pull out a chair for you. It wasn't clear if he was explaining this to Hadao or to Kuat Tin. Qiao Bahua continued with a smile. We also have to thank General Manager Qiu. Without you, I wouldn't have gotten to know CEO Kuat. Kuat Tin quickly laughed and replied, CEO Qiao, you're too polite. Knowing you is my honor. Exactly. Qiao Bahua laughed loudly. No need for formalities, it's an honor for both of us. Soon after, the cooperation between the 2 parties was decided. But Hadao was a bit anxious. Throughout the entire meal, he couldn't get a word in. This won't do. So Hadao smiled and poured tea for Cao Bahua, casually brushing back his hair to reveal his charm. Cao Bahua smiled and said, your assistant Xiu looks really sharp. Du Xiu lifted his teacup and coldly replied, he's not my assistant. He's an intern here today to learn. Director Hai places a lot of expectations on him. He'll probably be entrusted with important responsibilities later. As soon as Du Xiu finished speaking, Qiao Bahua immediately caught the implication and laughed heartily, turning to Hadao. So, you're friends with Director Hai? Then your rank must be twice as high as mine. My apologies, my apologies. Hadao was clever and couldn't miss the meaning behind those words. He forced a smile. No, I'm just a small intern. The atmosphere turned awkward again, with only Kuat Tin still focused on serving Du Xiu. After finishing, the 4 prepared to leave. Director Xiu heading back to the company. I can drive you. Du Xiu shook his head and thanked them. Director Kuat, but it's not necessary. I'm driving myself. Cao Bahua stood beside them and chuckled. Director Kuat already offered. Director Qiu, don't refuse. Director Kuat as a driver is a great honor. I'm even a little jealous. Du Xiu quickly waved his hand. How could I accept Director Kuat driving for me? Kuat Tin put his arm around Du Xiu's shoulder. Director Qiu, must we be so formal between us? Although Du Xiu had been close with Kuat Tin before, this was the first time he was put in a headlock like that in front of others. His ears flushed with embarrassment, and when he tried to adjust his posture, Kuat Tin held him even tighter. After all, Omega isn't as strong as Alpha, so Du Qiu resigned himself to being held by Quat Tin. I'll ride with you then. What about my car? Hadao nearby spoke up. If Director Qiu doesn't mind, I can drive your car and take Director Cao home. Hadao heard Cao Baohua agree and felt much relieved inside. Du Qiu heard that both major clients Cao Baohua and Quat Kin agreed, so it was impolite to refuse. He had to get into Quat Kin's car.